Shalom. Thanks for joining me. I'm reading in Matthew chapter 11. This is where we start today. I'm reading from the New International Version. So, after Jesus had finished instructing his 12 disciples, he went on from there to teach and preach in the towns of Galilee. When John, who was in prison, heard about the deeds of the Messiah, he sent his disciples to ask him, "Are you the one who is to come, or should we expect someone else?" And Jesus replied, "Go back and report to John what you hear and see. The blind receive sight, the lame walk, those who have leprosy are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the good news is proclaimed to the poor. Blessed is anyone who does not stumble on account of me." I want to pause there a minute, verses 1 through 6 here. I want to say a few things about that. Jesus is on his solo preaching tour. He has sent his disciples off to go and preach in the previous chapter, chapter 10. And now here in this chapter, he's by himself. But what I think is fascinating is that John the Baptist had been in prison. Now, John the Baptist had been seeing what Jesus had been doing. Jesus' ministry is ascending, and John the Baptist's ministry is descending, it's declining, it's becoming less. And now he's been put in prison. We learn later he was put in prison because he, being a prophet of God, he made it really clear to King Herod, "You are living in sin because you have taken your brother's wife." And King Herod still thought John was somebody important, so he kept him in prison. But Herodias, the woman, really hated John the Baptist, and we find out later in a later chapter that she managed to get John the Baptist beheaded in prison. We'll talk about that in another chapter. But in this chapter, John is in prison, and he's beginning to wonder, he's beginning to have doubts. Is Jesus the right one? Is Jesus the actual Messiah? He's beginning to have doubts. There was the general belief that the Messiah, when he came, would be one who would free Israel from Roman dominance and Roman occupation, make Israel an independent nation again, and in the process, establish God's kingdom on earth. So this was the view of the Messiah. Now there is the messianic view in the Tanakh, that is the Old Testament, that there is a coming conqueror. Jesus will be coming again, and this time when he comes, he won't be coming as a babe in the manger to die for us on the cross and rise from the dead, but instead he will be coming in glory with all of his angels, and he will be coming as a conquering hero, and he will establish God's everlasting kingdom here on earth then. But in Jesus' day, most Jews of that time were expecting the Messiah to come not only to be the one who would suffer on our behalf, but also would be the one who would rise up and conquer and establish God's everlasting kingdom. And John the Baptist was beginning to have doubts. Here he is in prison, and he's thinking, if Jesus is the Messiah, shouldn't we be seeing some of this? And so he sent his disciples to ask the question of Jesus, "Are you the one, or should we expect someone else?" And you look at what Jesus' reply is. You go back and you tell John what you have seen and what you have heard. And here's the list. The blind receive sight. The lame walk. Those who have leprosy are cleansed. The deaf hear. The dead are raised. And the good news is proclaimed to the poor. Now, first of all, let me just say this. There's nothing wrong with having questions and asking those questions. There's nothing wrong with that. What John did was not wrong. And if you have questions, it is not wrong to have questions. Just remember that. But here, what Jesus said was interesting because it comes out of the book of Isaiah, where the book of Isaiah had prophesied about what the Messiah would be like and what the signs or what the actions of the Messiah would be. In Isaiah chapter 35, verses 4 through 6, here are these words. "Say to those with fearful hearts, be strong, do not fear. Your God will come. He will come with vengeance. With divine retribution, he will come to save you. Then will the eyes of the blind be opened, and the ears of the deaf unstopped. Then will the lame leap like a deer, and the mute tongue shout for joy. Water will gush forth in the wilderness and streams in the desert. So that's Isaiah 35, verses 4, 5, and 6. And then over in Isaiah chapter 42, there are two verses, verse 7 and verse 18. Verse 7 says this. First, earlier than that, it says the Lord will come, and he said he'll be a light for the Gentiles. And then verse 7 says to open eyes that are blind, to free captives from prison, and to release from the dungeon those who sit in darkness. And down in verse 18, hear you deaf, look you blind, and see. And then later in Isaiah chapter 61, just verse 1, the Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is on me, because the Lord has anointed me to proclaim the good news to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom for the captives and release from darkness for the prisoners. So what Jesus is doing is telling John's disciples, see, all of these things that were prophesied through Isaiah, this is happening. I am fulfilling those things. So go back and tell him what you see and what you hear. Now, it's interesting that there's one thing that is mentioned here in the words of Jesus that were not mentioned in Isaiah, and that he was raising the dead. And that's not mentioned in Isaiah, but he was doing it. And he looked at that, and he mentioned that. He did say at the very end, and I thought that was a fascinating verse, verse 6, blessed is anyone who does not stumble on account of me. John was having problems. He was having second doubts. He was having those second thoughts, and he was wondering. That's a kind of stumbling. And Jesus said, blessed are those who are not stumbling, who are not offended because of me. And if you have faith, it's okay to have questions, but you pay attention. And the answer to all the questions is, what do you see? What do you hear? And is this in line with the teaching of the Bible? And that's where I want to stop in chapter 11.